So it's the processes that you inspect, correct? It's the processes of the providers who provide the service, not individuals working in them.
We look at the competence of the service as a whole,
Yes.
but that inevitably means that we will look at the competence of individuals, and we will look at the systems and processes that the organisation has in place to assure and maintain the competence of individuals. So they need to have a system where they've got evidence that somebody's had the appropriate training, has the right knowledge and experience to perform the duties that are assigned to them. And then we look at objective evidence of that. So we will sample. We won't necessarily look at every member of staff. We will sample across the different types of activities, and we will look at their competence in different ways. So we don't attest the competence of individuals, but it's the sum of the parts within that organisation.
Okay. Lord Griffiths.
We get at the question of how tough are you, or how difficult it is to pass accreditation. I mean, when you go to, say, a company and you have certain standards and so on, how often would you typically say, first-class organisation, we have no comment? How often would you say, there are certain remedial actions that need to be taken? How often would you say, I'm afraid we cannot accredit you? Okay. I mean, if you had categories like that, what would be the results over the last few years, for example, of what you've done?
I think it would be very rare that we conduct an assessment of an organisation that's not accredited and not identify any non-conformities. So there will pretty much always be non-conformities. Hopefully, if we've done the sort of preparation with them, they've had a pre-assessment and they've taken on board the comments that have been picked up then initial assessments should be successful, but with a number of things, hopefully minor in nature. Sometimes we need to conduct further assessment activities. I think across the board in UKAS, the proportion of those that don't succeed first time, I would think, is probably less than 10 or 20%. We have seen in the area of some of the new activities in forensics a higher number of revisits, because the organisations are maybe not as prepared in some cases as they might be. And I think that's one of the keys. I mean, we're talking about this, how do we keep the cost down? The better prepared the organisation to come forward, the more likely they'll be successful first time. But I think that typically we don't see that many cases where we conduct an initial assessment and can't make any recommendation at all that doesn't sort of relate to follow-on work. It would probably be a matter of quite a catastrophic failure. Yeah.
Lord Hunt, are you wanting to come?
You used the word quality incident. I mean, my question was sort of I was thinking about this, is do you look at trials afterwards when there were two very different cases, and does the science, as it were, scientific or technical questions emerge from that, and you use that data?
We would look more, there's two sort of things there. Quality incident, we're meaning something a little bit different, but we would ask the organisation certainly to review any work that's gone through the courts, and if there has been significant challenge, to raise that as non-conforming work within their systems themselves, and that then would form part of our assessments to look at.
In the case I was an expert witness, and it was palpable that the science being used was extremely old-fashioned and wrong, and so that's what I would have thought as a quality incident.
Absolutely, yes.
And I suspect these developments are happening more rapidly than every 5 years. That was my...
Yeah, and I think we would expect organisations to be very cognizant of if they've had any judicial comment made that's negative, or anything has happened in the courtroom that's negative, that they take that into their system and effectively deal with that as a complaint and put it through a non-conforming work process to raise issues, investigate and take some corrective action. We certainly would look at that. I mean, we're also seeing what's happening in the court, so if we see something from an accredited organisation, we would expect some action to have been taken. Quality incidents as well can take very many different forms, so it may be something along these lines, but it could be something, a contamination incident, or something where some erroneous method has been used, a piece of equipment has gone outside of calibration, and therefore the results generated by that might have some doubt cast on them. We expect people to take cognizance of that and to do something about it, investigate and take some corrective action. Also, to inform us. That's a very important part of accreditation as well, that if something comes to light in an organisation that is accredited, that we would expect them to alert us to that straight away, so we can also review that and make sure that we're involved in seeing the investigation and the corrective action that's taken place.
Lord Thomas.
What external steps do you take where expert witnesses are from time to time dishonest, they colour the evidence, they're unreliable? How do you check on this externally to ensure that the individuals are actually fit and proper to be doing their tasks within each of the bodies you accredit?
Well, we will look at the staff within that organisation.
No, but do you go to outside people and ask, or do you rely purely internally on what you're told?
Look deeply into their eyes.
We would look at the evidence that they have, the body of evidence that they have, and that needs to be more than just a statement from the organisation. So that would be the professional qualifications they hold, the participation in activities that quality assurance activities within the organisation that might be set externally, proficiency testing, external quality assurance measures. The individual experts, when they're giving evidence in court, is not part of the assessment and accreditation process currently. The Forensic Science Regulator is working on an appendix to the codes to elaborate the requirements so that can be included. But currently, the process takes us up until the point where they issue the report. So their performance in court is not included in our assessments.
So their ability to explain forensic science to the jury, to take a very basic level of competence, is not assessed, nor is their integrity.
Well, I think that one of the requirements within the Forensic Science Regulators Codes of Practice is exactly the ability to give evidence in the sense of trying to explain to a jury, or in layman's terms, the science that they're using, and make sure that would be possible. And we test that out during our visits by sitting down with people and saying, so explain to me, what is this that you've done? How did it work? Asking the questions that might come out in a courtroom from somebody who's unfamiliar with the evidence itself or the science behind it.
But do you go to the courts and ask them what this person is like, or test an organisation? So you have some...
Sounds as though you've had some experience, Lord Thomas.
Indeed, a lot of experience of bad experts. And I just wondered how you got them out of the system. That was my question.
I mean, I think currently we don't cover that aspect.
Where there is feedback within the service itself. So if we look at the complaints and any judicial feedback that they've received during the process, to make sure that is picked up and addressed. But actually looking at the performance in court, no, it's not currently covered.
I mean, also within UKAS, anybody can come to us with any feedback about any accredited organisation, and we take that very seriously as well in terms of following that up, and that might come to be a quality incident if we receive some feedback in relation to experts from an organisation that holds accreditation. We would follow that through.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to try and clarify this point, both the questions from the earlier one from Baroness Manningham-Buller and also just now from Lord Thomas. In your written evidence, you did talk about how organisations do get accredited in respect of the competence of the people reporting and interpreting the evidence. So it's very closely linked to what we've just been talking about.
Yes.
So how can you say a bit more about that? Because you talked about further requirements being necessary there. Can you explain what that means? In other words, how do you actually accredit how good somebody is going to be at actually doing exactly what Lord Thomas has been talking about, being in court? The test results are taken as given, but the way they're explained, the way they're interpreted, how do you actually accredit that person?
I think it's probably important just to clarify what we currently accredit in relation to opinions and interpretations. It's part of the 17025 standard to be able to make opinions and interpretations based on the test results. So an example would be, currently we're doing a lot of work with the fingerprint comparison bureaus, and that would be an example where the test itself, if you like, is to review a known mark and an unknown mark and look for similarities. The opinion would then be to say that given that information, is it likely to be Catherine Monnery's fingerprint? So you're drawing upon expertise of working in that field to make that sort of above and beyond the test result, the inference and the opinion around that. So that's the kind of opinion interpretation we currently would accredit. So it's the direct interpretation of the test result. What we currently don't accredit is, as Lorraine was explaining, the expert opinion then given in court, which might be, I think you've heard the term source and activity previously, so we might be looking at a source level approach to things. So that's just to say it was Catherine Monnery's fingerprint. How it got there, the activity, is something else again, and that's the opinion that's often given in court, the expert opinion given in court, and that currently wouldn't be part of the accreditation process. But in relation to the opinions and interpretations element that we do look at, we look at quite a number of other parts, as we said. So the qualifications, the experience, etc. But also the knowledge, a little bit around the edges of the science and the technology, so how things work and operate, and ask lots of questions around that during sort of interviews, during the assessments themselves. Look at the impact of variables, the uncertainty of measurement, look at limitations of a technique, and that's obviously quite important in some areas to understand that. And also perhaps legal requirements like the criminal procedure rules or the practice direction, and make sure people are aware of their responsibilities in terms of being experts going forward into the courtrooms.
So when an organisation comes to you to be accredited or to have its accreditation renewed, you are looking at the various test procedures they do. That I think is clear. But do they actually submit the individuals working for the organisation, the types of people that might well be experts in court?
We would look at that, not necessarily during the application process, they wouldn't define those, but during the assessments we would ask to see organisational structures, who was working in different areas within an organisation, look to see the role descriptions, the job descriptions of the people within it, any person specifications to do with qualifications or experience that would be determined for each of the different roles that might be in the forensic organisation. We'd see that they had staff fulfilling those roles and that those staff had the requisite qualifications and experience and had been trained and had the competency demonstrated through objective mechanisms, and that would be part of our assessment.
And so the result of the accreditation is that certain people within the organisation are given some kind of rating or
No, it would be the organisation that held the accreditation, and the staff would be not the people themselves. So it's not transferable in a sense. If somebody were to leave an organisation, they don't take that accreditation with them per se because they've been assessed under that organisation. It's the organisation and their ability to maintain the competence of the staff within it.